Hey, Leslie, did you know it's Friday?
Yes, I did. There is no doubt in my mind.
It is amazing how the days are defined by what Zoom I have scheduled. Um, Unbelievably so. And I am so excited that it's Friday because that means it's weekly update day. And we get to spend some time with Leslie. Sarah is very sad, but she is not going to be able to meet us today. But we'll share with you in a minute why she's not here because it is a very, very good reason, of course. And so we're going to read, actually, we're going to mix it up today. Let's mix it up. Leslie has some really awesome information that she is going to share. She also has slides that we will get to anybody who wants to see them and wants to kind of dig in those analyticals out there. But I would love for you to share what you have on your heart today, Leslie. Get us all updated and in the know.
Thanks, Deborah. Yeah, no, I'm happy. I'm happy to. And one of the things that I've alluded to the last couple of weeks is that we had to do a pretty quick pivot at CAR in terms of research in order to reach out to consumers and to the members on a very, very frequent basis. Because if you're waiting for monthly data to come out like we typically do when we calculate the monthly stats, it's going to be just rear view mirror 100%. And we need to be, real time, what's happening now to get an idea of what's coming ahead. So in addition to tracking the statewide MLS data on a daily basis, we do weekly reports internally, but we're looking at it on a daily basis in terms of closings and listings and pendings. We also have been doing a weekly poll of our members, just asking them about the impact of the COVID crisis on their business. So I'm going to go through just a few of the slides that I wanted to share and the information I wanted you to be aware of. And, one of the biggest takeaways is just how quickly this has all transpired. For example, one of the first questions that we ask is, do you think the coronavirus is going to have a negative impact on your business? And the first week that we did this was the first week in March. And the last weekend we did this was just last weekend. And we went from 53% of the respondents saying it will have a negative impact to 95% saying it will have a negative impact. So
Wow.
that's just how quickly that happened. And we asked about showings. That was the one that was at the top in terms of an impact. But the one that maybe half of the people thought it would have a negative impact was competition. And I thought that was really interesting. Of the 7 or 8 variables we asked about, prices and time on market and so on, the competitive aspect of the business, half of the people thought it was going to be the same or maybe even better for them. And again, I tip my hat to the entrepreneurial spirit of the real estate business. And you see this in other data points, and I'm sure other information that you're aware of, where there has been just an embracing of the technology tools that have been available for quite some time. But now what used to work isn't working anymore. So it's all about adaptation. It's all about getting with the digital virtual program and moving forward. It has had a significant impact on showings. 80% of the realtors said that they were doing no or fewer showings. And then we got into the kind of property management area, and we asked, if you're a property manager, have you had any tenants that were unable to pay? And 68%, over 2/3 of the people that answered, said yes. And this
Wow.
is kind of one of those double-edged swords, right? You have tremendous empathy for tenants who are in the process or have lost their jobs, are scrambling for income. In California, as one example, the forms to get pandemic unemployment assistance will be aren't even available yet. So just a lot of trouble getting help. But on the other hand, you have landlords who either are their, it's their property, or they have investors who are hiring them, who all of a sudden are looking at a fairly significant drop in income for a indeterminate amount of time. So that's something to look at. We've had more than a doubling of the percentage to almost 60% of the realtors who answered saying that they are doing virtual showings. 2/3 have had open houses canceled, so they're doing virtual open houses. And you've probably seen the ads on Facebook, like I have, for come to my virtual open house. It's Sunday, it's at 4 o'clock, and we're going to go through it, and we're going to talk about the property. We also ask about, are you feeling any reticence on the part of buyers to continue with their home purchase? And the first weekend we asked, it was 54% said yes, and now it's over 90%. One of the other questions that I'm frequently getting is, what is going to happen to prices? And I will say that we will see some softening in prices. I think you will see more at the upper end than you do in the moderate entry part of the market. It's too early for that to show up in statistics. And in fact, the March data that I shared with you last week, and you see this in the NAR data as well, prices are holding up really well. You've got more buyers trying to renegotiate prior to close, but only about 30% of the sellers have actually discounted their listing price. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. But as we go forward, I think you are going to see, I'm not thinking the 60% drop in the median home price that we saw during the Great Recession, nothing like that. But I do see some softening in terms of prices. 3 out of 10 of the realtors said that they did have a buyer attempt to renegotiate the price before closing, and nearly 1/2 of the respondents said that they had a buyer withdraw their offer. Let me give you a little bit more. 77% they had said they had a seller pull back from the market, and that was the first week we did it. 7 weeks earlier, it was only 45%. 33% said my seller did reduce their price, but that's not unusual. That's kind of a normal, that's, at least in California, those are the numbers we've been seeing for a while. And we'll have to track that and see if there's more pressure on the part of sellers to move things along. We also asked about any changes in listing behavior, and it's all the stuff you might expect. People expecting people to take off their shoes and wear booties, to wear gloves, to not touch anything, to use hand sanitizers, all of the safety precautions that are being recommended by the health experts in order to avoid exposing yourself to others and anything that, you exposure to them. So that has been happening quite a bit as well. Another thing that has really crept onto the scene is the attractiveness of vacant properties, right? Because in some areas you can go in and show a vacant property. So when we asked, are any of your listings vacant? 52% of the realtors said yes, and 44% of those said the listing was vacated prior to showing in order to facilitate showing. So that's one of the ways that we are kind of seeing that happening. Now, you've got about 1/3 of the people saying that they've had a property fall out of escrow, and when we ask them about that, 9 times out of 10, it's the buyer. And for the buyer, for the most part, it has to do with qualifying for a loan. It isn't kind of a whimsy, I'm uncertain now because of the pandemic, I don't want to buy. It's, I can't. I've lost my job. My partner's lost their job. Parents can't afford to give us a down. It's really a financial driver there. So those are
So Leslie,
some of the difficulties.
real
Yeah,
quick on that, I do have a question. So
sure.
you're hearing that it's more from the consumer side, and it's not like lending is getting tighter. It's truly from the consumer, the client side, the buyer side.
No, I think it is the lender. Well,
The lend
okay. It's partly they can't qualify,
Yeah.
but there is also a tightening of credit. Now, if this is a conforming loan that is purchased by Fannie or Freddie, that market is still liquid. But anything jumbo, and I know in my state, 20%, in California, 20% of the loans are jumbo, and in the Bay Area, it's much higher. That market is very, very thin. The investor appetite for risky loans has evaporated. And even in the conforming market, about a week ago, JP Morgan said we need a 700 minimum FICO score and we need 20% down. Many of the lenders only want to deal with people they have a current or relationship with, and you've seen that in the paycheck protection program. So I'm really glad you brought that up, Deborah, because there is just a huge concern on the part of investors as to how long people are going to not pay. How
Yes.
long are they going to be unemployed? And what is that going to mean for the investment in this commodity, which is a mortgage?
Right, right. Well, there's been a lot of, kerfuffling happening on social media about that exact question. It's like because there isn't one almighty survey that's asking all of the questions. And so the lenders are trying to say, well, it's this, the consumers are saying it's this, and it's kind of somewhere in the middle, a little bit of both. And so I love that there's focus on it. I think that also helps curb fear when we actually understand why things aren't happening.
Absolutely. And again, I'm doing a lot of outreaches, and it's not uncommon for the person that invites me to say, I want some positivity as well. And I think that's just so important to keep in mind. We are just in the beginning of what's going to be a difficult period, but we will get out of it. And so, as we've kind of talked before, it's like Wayne Gretzky, I play to where the puck is going. What is the market
Yes.
going to look like at the end of this? And how can I spend my time today to build a foundation for success? And as we've talked many times, the tech-enabled agent is going to have a huge, huge advantage coming out of this.
Yeah, I think that's so great.
Yeah,
Excellent. Thank you.
yeah, good question. So those were really my main points, just to kind of point out that in a 7-week period, we have really gone to maybe not, I'm going to be fine, to I have changed my behavior and I want vacant listings and I'm doing virtual showings and it's a whole new world.
Yeah, the vacant piece is really interesting because I have seen, I mean, most of the tours, the virtual tours that I'm seeing are actually the vacant homes because I'm guessing, right?
Yeah,
This is pure
yeah,
conjecture that if I were the seller, I wouldn't want somebody doing, virtual tours recording my home and putting that on the web, right? Like while I'm there. And
right.
so I can imagine that there is a lot of, I wonder if we'll see a quick shift in that when people put their homes on the market now, they want to move out and as much as possible to make them vacant.
Well, because that's the only way in many areas that you're allowed to show them. So that
Yeah.
it's like you have to, or you're not going to have an active listing.
Right. Well, I was talking with one of our WomanUP community members, Maria Quattrone, and she's in Pennsylvania. And they are not essential. Real estate is not happening, and so like she can't even go into to the listing. Like she can't go to it.
Right.
And there's certain things that certain workarounds, and they are doing virtual, but it has to be of the vacants, and so there's all these different, every state, in other words, no matter where you're listening, where you're watching today, check with your state, right? Make sure that you're doing business legally and appropriately for your state, because every state kind of has a little bit of a nuance on what they will allow. So interesting. And maybe when Sam joins us later in the show, she's up in Toronto, in Canada. So it'll be interesting to hear, I'm guessing some of the things are similar, but they do things differently in certain areas. So, I love though that it's such a resilient industry. It really is such a
Yeah,
resilient industry.
it is. It is. I think there will be a lot of lessons learned during this period. Don't. It's the great pause, and there's a lot that can get done during this time. But it's very sobering when everything you took for granted just disappears overnight. You
Yeah.
know.
Yep. I love your quote. I feel like we say it every show right now, but don't waste the crisis, right?
Right.
Don't waste the
Right.
crisis. What are you doing for your business in your business today that will help you in the future? And knowing these stats, what I was thinking as you were talking, Leslie, is I think what we'll do is we'll put these into a format that we can share them on the blog and do
Right. Perfect.
send people there so that you don't have to worry about emailing people because I'm sure your
No,
inbox
that's a
is
great
crazy.
suggestion. Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of blog, just in case you missed it last week, we published new post from Leslie called Manels about the Manel situation. For those of you who don't know what that is an all male panel. So if you missed it, go check it out because it's really, really good. And it's got some excellent calls to action and things for us to all be thinking about. And honestly, Leslie, I loved that you were even calling people out now in the virtual space because I sometimes feel like a bit of a broken record because of my role and my purpose here in this industry, which is to make sure that there is parity. But I loved how you were like, listen, who are you inviting to come onto your shows? Who are you highlighting right now? If it's been all men all day, all month,
Well,
hello.
and people are used to it, and my thought is just what I would love to see, and I'm going to suggest this to one of my colleagues who, does a lot of these, is what I would love to see is have you have an all-female panel and go through the whole session and never mention the fact that it's all female.
Yeah.
I mean, that's parity, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It was interesting. Somebody somebody's putting together a conference and when they're ready for it to be announced, I'll make sure to give them kudos, but they called me and they said, we really want to have a like women in leadership panel. And, what are some topics? And I said, well, first of all, stop calling it women in leadership. Like, unless it's something that's like WomanUP, where it's more of a training and connecting place. This is a movement to help women gain their courage so that when they go out into the industry, they are ready and they are pumped and they are opening their own brokerages and they are getting on those stages because they've had the experience men have had for the last 80 years on stages. But when you're a mixed crowd, stop calling it that.
Exactly. I could
Stop
not agree
calling it
more.
that. Like, we all get it. We can see with our eyes that they're all women.
And you don't need to call it out. It doesn't need to be a special thing.
No, because it's starting. I mean, and even for me, as a women's empowerment consultant, it's grating to me. I'm like, would you stop? Like, stop it, because it's starting to feel uncomfortable. It's like we don't constantly need to call it out. We need to be
We
aware
can
of it.
evolve in this process, right?
Yes.
And
Amen.
yeah.
And I'm loving it. I'm loving seeing some of the impacts of what we are creating inside this community, the ripple effects. Last week I saw 3 different groups highlighting books written by women. They didn't say, oh, and here's our list of female authors. It was, in the mix, there were female written books. And we had this conversation in Vegas for the WomanUP sessions that we did about emotional intelligence, and how almost all of the books that people quote about emotional intelligence are the ones that are written by men, but there are tons that are written by women. And so even I saw 2 of the books that we talked about in Vegas in this slideshow, and I thought, oh, like, I don't know if it was exactly us and exactly that moment, but I feel like we're putting that energy out there. And so for those of you who are here and part of this movement and sharing those lists and writing books yourself, like, hoorah. Like, a difference is being made, change. We're starting to see it. And if you have hosted events online since we've all been, since SIP 2020, and it's been all men, shame off you, shake it off, be better, bring some ladies in. It's okay to change. People
Well,
will
I think
listen.
the point is that we all do better when we have a diversity of voices.
Yeah.
It's really as simple than that. You don't want groupthink. You don't want people that all have a similar experience and a similar background and a similar way of approaching things. And it's more interesting and enriching, and you get better solutions, right?
Yeah.
When you have a mix of people. I mean, it's just a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things that I know Sarah and I have lots of conversations with, over the last 36, 40 months is even inside the Woman Up community, making sure that we are diverse with position and people of color. And because it's, even though we're all women, we all have different experiences in, these bodies we're walking this planet in. And you can see the shift. You hear the comments that people feel and see it. And so it will only bring positive energy into your community when you do create that space for diversity and diverse voices. So I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. So much, Leslie.
Well,
Are
you're
you have any,
welcome. It's nice to see everybody.
yes, any closing words, anything you listened to this week, anything you want to leave us with? You're like, besides calls.
I'm coming up short. I will tell you that next week we are having our first virtual board of directors meeting. And one of the things that's happening in my head is whenever I think about an aspect, I've been going to these meetings for over 35 years, right? And I see people on stage and I see people connecting, and like, well, when you run into so-and-so, or when you see these people in the hall, be sure to check with them. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a whole new thing. So it's been quite an experience. So you just embrace it, dive in. It won't be perfect, but it'll be great, and you'll get better at it. I will close. I saw a graphic this morning of a small circle that said comfort zone, and a very large circle that said where the magic happens.
Yes.
And so if you're out of your comfort zone, you're in absolutely the right place, and just keep going.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I know exactly the image you are talking about. We will add it to that blog post
Great.
so that everybody
Great.
can see that. All right. Thanks so much,
All right.
Leslie.
Have a
We
good
look
weekend,
forward to next
everybody.
week. You too. All right.
Bye.
Bye. All right, everyone. I am so excited to introduce you to this week's weekly wisdom voice. Now, many of you who attended the Toronto Real Estate Board event that we went to up in Ontario last year met this amazing leader. Her name is Sam Hewit. She's the director of realtor development for a mega brokerage in Toronto. She didn't write down the name of the brokerage, so I'll let her reveal if she feels like it. She's a wife, a mother of two, and believes in helping women pursue excellence, however they define that to be. Hello, she is our people. Sam joined us for that WomanUP event in 2019. Her conversation was one with Tami Bonnell, the CEO of Exit Realty and one of the sponsors of WomanUP, yay, and Karen Cox, who many of you have seen on the interwebs. This is a mega leader inside the Canadian real estate space. They talked about handling difficult conversations with confidence, and it was an audience favorite. I'm so excited for you to meet her, for you to hear her wisdom and all of the things that they've got going up in Canada. So without further ado, I'm going to bring her into the stream so that you can all meet Sam Hewit. Hi, Sam.
Hi. How's it going, Deborah?
It's going so well. You look fantastic. Look at that beautiful red. Woo!
Yeah, it was red. It was Wear Red Day today in memory of the shooting in Nova Scotia. So I'm wearing my Royal LePage red, but also my Canada red.
Oh, I love the spirit of Canada.
Mm-hmm. I know it's a great country.
It really is. It really is. There are many times where I say I'm South Canadian. I dream of those days. I wear my poppy on 11/11. Yeah, I
Well, there
love
are
it.
days where I say, like, I wish I was an American, like when I miss Target and stuff like that. And then there are other days where I watch the news and I'm like, nope, good here.
Yeah, right. It's all so incredibly relative, right?
It is
Oh my goodness.
exactly correct.
So, as I was sharing with everyone, you have joined us on our stage before. We actually met you through Val Garcia, right? That's who
I love Val
introduced us.
Garcia. Yeah,
Yes, Val has served this community for years.
she has.
And we love her around here. So if you're watching, Val, thank you for the introduction.
Love you, Val.
So you, when I did the call out and said, who has something on their heart that they can boil down to 3 questions so we can be super impactful in an efficient manner and this rock the community's mind, you were like in the first 10 to raise your hand. Of course.
Was I? Oh, that's good. I like
yes,
first.
you were in the first 10. I love it. I think you probably were in the first 5, but I'd have to look at the list.
Okay.
So we are going to be talking about ways to succeed in real estate now, like right now in the middle of this wild, wacky, can be wonderful, can be somewhat not so wonderful days. They are up and down by the minute. But now how to succeed. So the first question I have for you is, what's working today from home?
So I think, I loved what Leslie was saying earlier a few minutes ago, where she said, what you're doing today is going to have the biggest impact on when we get out of this. Because, if you're on the live right now and you're watching, full well that, when you're a real estate agent looking for new leads and you find a new lead, it typically isn't a right now lead. It's typically like a 30, 60, 90 day lead. And so if you do nothing from now until we quote unquote get out of this, and whatever method that is and whatever that looks like, because no one knows yet, it's then going to take you like another 30, 60, 90 days to start building your pipeline again. So when you think about what's working today from home, I think the first thing is really just making sure you're in the right mindset that, if you're consciously deciding that you just want to like take it as a vacation, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to have business that's going to come once we have freedom of mobility again, you got to focus on what you're doing right now, which really means take action. So for me, as you mentioned in my intro, I'm a working mom. And so, when you're at home, my kids are home. I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, which is like trying to work with ants running around your living room. And so for me, what's working well from home is time blocking. So I'll say to my husband, here are my Zoom calls for the day. Here's where I have to have uninterrupted time. And he'll say, okay, here's my schedule. And then we sort of take like 2-hour windows. So when he's on his window, I've got the kids down here and I'm trying to entertain them and do some homeschooling, which is nothing. Coloring, identifying the tree leaves. I mean, it's really not exciting, but that's helping. I think, again, if you're going to try to figure out how to get a lot done in a short amount of time, I think you've got to be really efficient. And I think what's working right now from home is figuring out what are the best activities I should be spending my time on. Because I think when we had the luxury of 8 hours a day and we sat in our office and drank hot coffee, you could spend an hour and a half just figuring out what am I working on and looking through your papers and doing all those things. When you've got a 2-hour chunk of time, you've got to figure out what are the most efficient tasks that I can do right now that are going to make a difference in my business.
Yes.
And I think that's how you have to kind of focus on it.
I want to just throw in here
jump in.
A little fun tip, because you were talking about identifying leaves with the kids. Like, that's no joke, right? Like, that's botany, right? That's a class.
That's science.
There's an awesome app that I use called Plant Snap. So if your phone has a version of Plant Snap, it is the coolest thing. So you take a picture of a leaf or a flower, and it literally looks through its database and tells you
amazing.
What it is. And so you can learn like where its origin is. You can learn its scientific name. Like, there's all sorts of things that you can do, and you can start kind of keeping your own botany collection. And so it just creates like, some like a fun layer
Fun
to
activity.
you're getting outside and enjoying and having fun with the kids and teaching, to your point, like homeschooling. Like this really isn't homeschooling. This is like
It's not.
crisis schooling, right? And so
It's not.
teaching kids how to get through a crisis and it is way more important, right? How mindset, mental health, like how are they caring for themselves? So I love that. So Plant Snap.
Plant Snap. I wrote that down. We're gonna look that up.
Yes, have fun.
I mean, I think it's such a great point that you said. I mean, it's not a situation any of us have been in before. And I think this idea of like all of these expectations and all of this pressure, and when I was waiting in the green room, you guys were talking about the mantle, and I was killing myself laughing because it's so true. I mean, I go to so many conferences. Like I was at one a little while ago and they had this panel called the Gunslingers, and it was all, white men in their late 30s who are like killing it in the business world. And I was like, why is this news? Why is there a panel on this at a conference? It's so bizarre to me, but I think the world's changing a lot.
Gunslingers on top of it. It's like how violent. Killing.
So I think, on top of that, what's working from home, obviously people are connecting more than ever on platforms like this. And I'm sure this is a comment I've heard from many people, but for me personally, I feel like I'm connecting more now with people than I ever have before. I'm being purposeful at my connections, and I'm trying to be intentional when I'm reaching out to people. Because, I heard this great quote last week where it said, we're not all in the same boat. We're all going through the same storm, but we all have different boats. And some people's boats are better equipped to manage this than others.
Yes.
And so I think we also have to be aware when we're working from home, what's working is, having that mindset that people are experiencing this differently. And that's important as well. Using Zoom and connecting is really, really helpful.
Well, and I've talked about this on other Zoom calls, specifically with a lot of the women's council here in the States about, a lot of us have opposites in our partners. So we might be an introvert, they're extrovert, or vice versa. And again, introvert and extrovert is about how we replenish our energy. And it's not about being shy, right? Like everyone assumes introvert means you're shy. No, it means you need your downtime. And so for those of you who are the extroverts, it's time to reach out to the other people in your world and say, can I adopt the extrovert in your home? Like put together a new
I love that.
because here's the thing, like my husband is an extreme extrovert. I know Stephanie Chumbley is watching too. Dale Chumbley is an extrovert's extrovert. Like I'm certain he has got to be like scheduling himself with Zooms or Be Lives throughout the day, or he's driving Stephanie crazy with all the questions and wanting to talk, right? This is natural. Andrew will knock on my door and I'm like, oh no, like I love you, baby, but please, I need my quiet. And it's like, it's so important that the extroverts out there reach out to the other extroverts. And on the other side, that the introverts, like Steph and myself, are like looking at each other going, I see you. How can I pray for you?
Right? How can I stay away from you? How can I not Zoom you tonight?
Yes, exactly. Let me text you, not ask you to Zoom.
Exactly.
These are important things because we are all different. And even those of us who our lives might look the same, we're coupled, we have kids that are the same age, it's still different. So
it's still different.
Yeah, it's huge.
Still different.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So Zoom, connecting more. And then you talked about this whole 5x5 thing. So share with the community what this 5x5 is.
Yeah, it kind of leads into question 2 that we had talked about. But, for me, I try to figure out, again, if I'm in real estate, if I'm a top selling realtor, if I want to have leads coming out of this, if I want to have my business being as robust as I can, given the fact that my activities are limited right now, I kind of came up with this idea in my head of 5x5. So what are 5 proactive ways that I can connect with somebody, 5 different people before 5 o'clock? Because that's kind of my quitting time. Sometimes it's a little bit earlier, but could I make 5 personal videos? Could I make 5 outbound phone calls? Could I send 5 text messages to an introvert that says, hey, I'm thinking about you, don't want to Zoom you, but are you okay? Checking in, is everything all right? And that will also keep you, it's sort of like a freight train. I mean, you want to right now just keep it moving at some pace. You don't have to be going gangbusters, but it's easier to get momentum when you have a little bit of momentum than it is to start from like completely flat-footed and to start the train and get it going again. And so if you can think about, what can I do right now to kind of keep my train moving, you're going to have an easier time coming out of this, I think.
I love that. And, I think when there are so many of us who love to have a list, a checklist, right? And so I like the 5 by 5. That's fun. So what other activities should we consider? Like, how should we be spending our time, or how could we be spending our time that is, intentionally invested in not only caring for ourselves right now, obviously, but also taking that into the future when, the great pause button has been released.
Lifted. Yes. Hit play again.
Yes.
I mean, I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is what does my life look like when we go back to normal, right? I mean, I think this is a gift in the sense that you get the opportunity to sort of think about, what do I want to go back to? Do I want to go back to where I was, or do I want to go back to something different? And, I think that thought alone has been playing in my head a lot. What do I want my life to be going forward? And I think there's a lot of people, I think, that are feeling the same way, that are thinking, what does it look like when I get out of this? Yeah. And when you relate it to real estate, I mean, a lot of the, the salespeople, a lot of our realtors that I talk to every day, at the beginning, they were saying to me, all these leads I had are gone now. And I kept saying, that's okay, because you're going to get new people that this is going to spur them into action. Yes. You're going to get my father and my stepmother who've been in their house forever. It's this massive 4-bedroom house for the two of them. And my stepmother says, we use the kitchen and a bedroom. Like, I don't know why we have all this space. Right. They weren't even thinking about moving before COVID, but now that they're home and they're there, it's making them think, what do I want to do with my life? And I think that's going to be a sentiment a lot of people are going to go through once we get out of this.
I agree. Well, and I think that there's also, so there's those who maybe our boomer parents who have been kind of holding on to the house they raised us in, because the grandkids could come over, or whatever sentimental, or that they were just waiting. They were simply waiting, that have realized it's a lot of space. But there's also those who were
the opposite,
thinking maybe, or they're talking about the big baby boom of 2020, right? Like the sip, not only is it shelter in place, but we're sipping a lot more. So we're going to see a lot of babies. So there's going to actually be families that are going to expand in size. And so I think there's actually going to be so many moments that illicit real estate needs on the other side of this, that I think you're absolutely right. It's, I keep telling people, like, rest. Stop worrying. If you're fortunate enough to have, financial security, and you're not stressed out about paying your bills, take a hot minute and rest, because it's coming. Like, I have heard no one say that the real estate market is going to disappear when they push play. It's the opposite. Pent up demand. There wasn't enough houses to begin with. Like, all of these things, that it's going to be harried in a season where it wasn't so crazy, or the year before, right?
Yeah, it's such a great point. I mean, I think, one of the questions you asked me is, what activities could you spend your time on? And, I think you made such a great point. If you are fortunate enough to be safe and financially secure, what should you be doing? And I think rest is a really important thing. I think getting clarity on what it is you want your life to look like when we return to real life again. But I also think, like, how can you give back to your community? How can you, create some kind of movement? And I know there's a lot of sort of press and discussion right now around, being a leader and being prominent in your community. And I don't even think it needs to be that flashy, but it's, your next door neighbor lost their job. Could you drop by a little gift card or something? Could you, drop off some groceries? Could you, can you donate to your food bank? Can you ask your family not to buy you birthday presents and make a donation somewhere? I mean, how can you, in terms of activities, how can you bring people together that are fortunate enough to be able to be, safe and fed and well and financially secure, and use that to be a way for you to give back? Because there are a lot of people suffering, and there are a lot of people that are struggling and that are going to struggle for a while. And I think you got to spend some time and think about that. I'm trying to work right now on an event to do some kind of charity. And, if you're a realtor listening to this, there's all kinds of opportunities to create, activities like that. Do you have people on your database that are, that have small businesses that you can support somehow through this? Can you buy a gift card if they're a hairdresser that you use when you're out of COVID? Can you have them come on and do a presentation? My landscaper, for example, obviously isn't doing anything right now. And I said, well, I'm trying to put together this little group of people to support local businesses. Do you want to come in and talk? And he's like, yeah, that would be amazing. So things like that, activities that you can do that make you feel good, that are helping your community. They don't have to be big, grand, crazy things. Just think small scale. How can I help one person today that I know?
Yeah. And, I think that's the important thing, is that, a movement doesn't have to be something that's rallying millions of people.
No.
Like we tend to get caught up in that because that's what gets the media, right? Like, if I'm not Greta, then I shouldn't be worrying about my environment. Well, sorry, but it's in your own garbage can that the environment is affected. So like, what are you doing inside your home? And then how can you inspire? I love the ideas that you shared, the, dropping things off. I have been seeing, like the birthday drive-bys, like trying to keep in touch with people on their birthdays. So, it's a great opportunity. I kind of have felt over the last decade, and it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on this, Sam. Like, I feel like everybody's, in my mind, has kind of lives on Facebook now, and I don't always know where they are from. Like, I don't really know. It's like, well, yeah, we're connected. And so when I go to a new city, it's always this like, shoot, like, who do I know here? And I try and use Facebook and search people I know in this city, but then, they live in Surrey. They don't live actually in Vancouver and doesn't pull like, and so it's such a great time for those people who are local, those people that you probably see when you travel to a conference outside of your city, because you always think you're going to see each other. Like, those are the people. Check and see, are their birthdays coming up? Can you do a drive-by? Can you, leave something fun on their front porch? That's the thing with shelter in place, is there is this, the pendulum swung really hard for some people where they're like, I can't leave my house. And it's like, well, that's actually not what it means. You should be safe. You should wear protective gear. But if you've got a loved one that you want to drop something off on their doorstep, that's absolutely acceptable. Of course, unless you're sick. Like, be smart, right? Be smart. If you're healthy and you're strong and all of those things, but you can do things for the people in your circle. And right now, going super local is such a beautiful option. I think that's so great. And please, when you put your charity event together, let us know. So if we can participate from the States, we'd love to.
Oh, thanks.
Of course.
That's nice of you. I will, for sure. I will. I mean, I think, you bring up a great point. Like, how can you support local? The reality is people are home. So it's easier to reach people now than really it's ever been. Right. And so from an activity perspective, if you want to figure out how can I be present and helpful, I mean, you really just need to pick up the phone and call people and say, how are you? Can I help you? I mean, we don't need to overcomplicate it. My little trick that I do that I find really quite helpful is I actually go on Facebook and I pull up their name and I see if they've posted something that I can use to like open conversation with. And then I say, how are you? And I saw on Facebook this, it was your daughter's birthday. That must suck because she can't go outside. She can't see her friends. And, that's, I think, instead of having an activity strategy or a marketing strategy where you're going wide, I think you have to go deep. And I think you've got to look through, who are you connected with on a regular basis? And how can I help people in my sphere, in my community? Because the leads you had 60 days ago are probably not the leads you're going to carry forward, but there are new people that this is going to spur into action. And I think you have to help educate people. I mean, Leslie was unbelievable. I've never seen her speak before. I've never heard her speak before. And just that level of content, that's the kind of information you have to be delivering to people. So from an activity perspective, how do you distribute that? My husband works for a garbage company, and so they're essential, obviously. And he's on Zoom all day. So this morning at 7 a.m., I'm like racing to finish blow drying my hair and getting ready. And he's on the Zoom call with the executive team. And I heard his colleague say something about, you know, financially and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, the real estate market's in the tank. And I just kind of stopped, you know, I only had a bra on, and I was like, should I come there? Do you want me to talk to them? Can I step in? And he was like, get out.
It would have been like one of those poor Jennifer moments, right? Have you seen that video of the woman that took the Zoom call into the bathroom with her and went tinkle? Yes. I mean, you're just like walking behind your husband in your bra going, no, the real estate market is not tanking. And all of a sudden you realize I'm in my, you know, auto titsling, you know.
That's what I felt like. I felt like holding up a chart behind them and like just going by so they could see it, but I didn't. I behaved myself. But I think the reality is, I mean, here in Toronto, in the GTA, you know, sales are down, transactions are down 70% in the first 2 weeks of April. So people hear that number and they start thinking, well, what does that mean to me? How does that affect my life? And so we have to help educate people, I think, with data and make sure that we're the voice of clarity for them.
That's so good. You know, I'll drop in the comments a link to this awesome conversation that I had with Molly McKinley and Lori Davis and Paula Nash over at Rate My Agent. They're another sponsor of WomanUP. And we had this conversation about engaging communities. And one of them was, I feel like this hit Canada, but did you guys do the 365 things to do did you have that rage where real estate agents were making these Facebook groups that were 365 things to do in your town?
I haven't seen a lot of those. I've seen a lot of community groups popping up. I've seen a lot of like food groups, actually, like where can I get takeout
exactly tonight? Like food. So this was like a decade ago. And again, another shout out to Dale, because he was one of the first. He and Maura O'Neill, who's down in Atlanta, created these pages that basically highlighted a different small business owner each day. Like here's a pizza place or this.
I love that.
And so they did that. And so basically every day there was something new. And so we're talking about community pages. And this is where it comes into an activity where you can spend your time, everyone, is go back to those pages that you created, go back to those, whether it's a 365 page or a community page, and go all the way back and think, who did I highlight and how can I serve their business now? How can I talk to them? And the Rate My Agent team actually put together a checklist that allows you to go through and like, there's some questions like, here's, you know, how are you doing? Do you have a business I can support? You know, can I buy a gift card? You know, all of those things. And here's the thing, you know, obviously they're a company that has what they're doing in Australia and now here in the States is helping agents get all of their reviews in one place, right? Like everyone should have the reviews in one place. Right now, the consumer has to go all over the place, right? And so it's this really cool new technology. And so ultimately they want people to get reviews. Duh. Just like real estate agents want people to buy and sell homes, right? And so they put together this cool checklist that helps people say, how can I help you? One of the options is, of course, can I give your business a review? And then in reciprocity, you could technically each week, you know, have a dozen new reviews for your business each week. And imagine that. Imagine giving and receiving that many reviews. At the end, you're going to be on fire on all of the socials because you've got such excellent reviews. So I think there's a lot of really great tools and so many amazing ideas that we've shared. Okay, so let's bring it around to how you're staying sane right now. You mentioned we shared in your bio, you're a wife, you're a mom of two, you are an executive, you are a friend, you are. So how, give us some ideas of how we can center ourselves and bring it back in.
Center ourselves and bring it in. So I think, you know, there's sort of two sides to this scale a little bit, right? There's the like, what are you doing now to make sure you come out of this? How are you being proactive in your communication? How are you reaching out to people? What are you providing to your community? But then there's also like the mental health aspect of it. And there's the home life and what's going on in your world at home, and how are you able to sort of, you know, execute on the things you need to do. And I think it's a really fine balance. And so really specific. And I think the most important thing I try to think about every day, it's written in my agenda beside me here, is that done is better than perfect. And, you know, you can create a video, you can do an interview with somebody, you can redo it because you don't like your hair or the way you sound, or you laugh too loud and it sounds weird. Who cares? Just get it out, get it done. And so to stay sane really in any time, but especially right now, I think you've just got to focus on being efficient and nimble and getting things done. You know, from a work perspective, every night, usually around this time or when my kids are in bed, I sit down and I write down 3 things I have to do the next day. And I don't let myself get up or, you know, really have that glass of wine until the 3 things are done. And that's how I kind of stay on track that way. I think from a home perspective, I think you've got to really lower your expectations of yourself and your family. My kids are not dressed today. They just didn't bother, and I couldn't bother fighting with them because it doesn't matter if they're in pajamas. You know, I had to angle this properly, because if I angle it the other way, you'll be able to see the millions of dishes behind me, because before COVID, my dishwasher broke down. So we're hand washing everything right now. Really exciting with the 3 meals and 295 snacks I serve out of this kitchen. So that's, I mean, you know, expectations for me have really been lowered.
Yes.
But I think also too, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, I talked to Val Garcia about this a lot. There's a lot of like hustle porn out there right now. Like, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow publicly said, like, you should be using this time to write a book. And I'm like, listen, Gwyneth, my kids are in pajamas still. Like, lay off the write a book business, right? I think, you know, for yourself, I think you have to give yourself grace. And I think you have to figure out, what is the most important thing for me to get out of this?
Yeah.
For me, I have a newfound appreciation for my husband, who kills it as a dad. And really, I couldn't do what I do or be who I am without him. You know, I have a different relationship with my kids. I'm much more calm. I'm more patient. I'm not worried so much about stuff that doesn't matter. And at work, I'm just super like, I'm dialed in. This is what I have to do today. This is what I need to get done. And the rest doesn't matter. And that's how I'm surviving at this point in time. Sometimes it's not about thriving. Sometimes it's just, I'm going to survive this until we get back to life again.
And who's to say what you just described is not thriving? I mean, I think
yes,
like what
I am a high achiever. So.
Yes, but see the things you just said, you know, you have a newfound appreciation for your husband. That's a huge win. You are giving yourself more grace. I like to say grace on grace on grace, shaking off the shame. I mean, these are all things that you're nailing one right after the other. I think possibly what we need to be considering is flipping the conversation, flipping what surviving is for what we've always said thriving is, and what you get where I'm going, right? Like
yes. Thank you.
I'll never forget. I was in New York City. It was just a couple of years ago, and I was doing an interview with a company, and they were like, "Wow, you're really anti-hustle." And I said, "I really am. Like, I was not created to hustle. I was not created to be go, 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 more, more, more. I can live in abundance without being a billionaire. Like I can live in abundance without having a 6-pack. I don't have to have the most amazing body. I don't have to have the most amazing house. Like these are not things that are important to me. And the world tries to tell me they are.
Yes.
Right. And I think now we're filling our days with different things. We are filling it with, you know, I love how you talk about that that you have a calmness about you with your children, because I think there's a lot of moms who haven't figured that out yet. And so, you know, I love the first tip, like, don't force them to get dressed. Like it doesn't matter. No one's coming over.
No one's here.
No one's going to see the dishes. No one's going to see the crazy unbrushed hair or the bunny slippers. Like it's like, these things are okay. As long as we are being good to each other, as long as our mental health is stable, like these are the things that matter. And I'm truly hoping that there is a community that's growing. And I feel it, like this grassroots community that's growing.
A movement.
Yeah, a movement, sure. I mean, that's saying, you know, what I want to take with me and what I want to leave behind is very clear. And I'm doing
Here,
this
here.
fun show called Spill the Tea with Molly on Tuesdays. And our series right now is just that, is what will you take with you?
Mhm.
And it's such the scary thing about what will you take with you means you're leaving things behind.
Mhm.
And it's scary for some people to say no. And so we're going to be working on that. We'll be sharing that here on the group as well. Like there's some beautiful self work that we can be doing on our in our days during our 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, while we're doing our makeup in the morning, because we have one more Zoom call. I will add in one hack and then I'll ask you final goodbyes. One of the things that I started doing is I no longer do video on Mondays or Thursdays.
Wow.
So I pack all of my shows, all of my podcasting, everything in on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Mhm.
And last week was my first week of doing that. It was amazing.
Good for you.
It was amazing. Like saying, it's not that I'm not working those days. It's just, if somebody wants to Zoom, these are the 3 days.
Mhm.
I can talk the other ones.
Mhm.
It just allows me even the freedom to, if I've got a call, I can take my dog out for a walk and be on the
Mhm.
phone, like
Mhm.
back in the day. So last minute words of advice, inspiration, manifestation that you want to speak over the community, go.
Yeah, I think I just want to say, Deborah, thank you so much to you and Sarah for having me. I've been such a believer in the WomanUP movement and the WomanUP community for so long. I am a leader, a female leader in real estate, in a real estate brokerage. And I loved, what you and Leslie were saying earlier about how this whole idea of like women in leadership, for me, I think my big overall perspective is really what drives me. And I would encourage everyone on this call, if you don't know what that is already, spend some time and think about it. Because for me, I do what I do and I work as hard as I do and I push as hard as I can, because one day when my kids, I have 2 girls, and one day when my girls get older, I don't want it to be, here's the women in leadership panel. It's just going to be, here's the leadership panel. There's not going to be this huge discussion around, women at the top. And this is probably a whole separate conversation we could have, which I believe in wholeheartedly. But, really at the end of the day, if you want whatever it is you want to do as you're listening to this live presentation, you can accomplish it. And if you let go of the expectation and you let go of, what society seems to think, and if you just really focus on what do I want, you have to make choices, but you'll get there.
I love that. Such beautiful word. All right. I know that there's people who are listening, people who are watching, whether they're watching live or they're going to be watching the replay, who are like, I want more of Sam in my life. So I know that they can get in touch with you here on Facebook. I know you're on Instagram because I've been tagging you. They're like mad the last couple of days. There. So we'll be sure to drop those in the comments below. And then as I mentioned before, I was not kidding. If you, when you're ready to, put your charity event together, let us know. And if you've got things that are happening in your hood that we're invited to, feel free, let us know. The beauty of this time, I think, inside the real estate space, especially, is the opening of doors, right? The boundaries and the filters are being lowered, and the doors are opening and people are sharing. So we love sharing with our, our brothers and sisters from Canada. So as you see fit, let us know. We'd love to support you along the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm so grateful to you guys. Thanks, Deborah.
You're so very, very welcome.
I'm loving that bandana, by the way, and that red hair.
Isn't this gorgeous. So much fun? I was like, I felt bohemian
beautiful.
Today.
It looks amazing. Every time I see you, you look amazing.
You're so funny. It's one of the fun little, I'm looking at myself more often on camera. Let's just be real, right? I mean, in real life conversations, we don't have to look at our face.
Yes.
Like, I'm looking at you, but I don't have to see me. And I'm like, I'm just getting tired of my own hair, right? I'm like, I need to put things in it. I need bows and bandanas. And
It
so
looks great.
yeah,
It
I'm going
looks
to be
great.
playing with that a lot more. So alrighty, my dear, thanks again.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye. All right, everyone. So I've got some updates for you. And there aren't tons of them, but there are some. So I mentioned earlier that I would let you know why Ms. Sarah is not here. And let me put my specs on so that I can read this out to you. So she is actually in a meeting and getting things together because on 4/28, so next Tuesday at 8 a.m., the PUA applications are being opened and available to independent contractors, including realtors. Tuesday of next week, unemployment is going to be available to independent contractors, realtors, next week. So what they're doing at CAR is getting ready to extend the hotline hours from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Next Tuesday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., the hotline will be open. So if you've got questions, as soon as that application happens, the team at CAR has got you covered. They are going to be there. They are going to be there to answer your questions. So they are learning and extending and learning some more. So make sure when you call, you remember they are loving on you and they are so 100% behind your success and want to serve you at their highest and best. So if you've got the questions, like I said, the hotline will be open next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We've had a lot of questions about the event in September. And while we don't have any big announcements, we do know that, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen, NAR canceled the event in NOLA because they closed down the city for large events. And it's same things are happening across the country. So we won't be meeting in person in September. We won't be hosting the big event at Pasea in September 2020. However, I know this is not a big shock to all of you. However, we are obviously already talking about 2021 with Pasea because they want all of us there. So we're going to be doing a poll early next week about dates. They've given us 2 dates. They've given us a bucket of dates in late June 2021 and late August, early September. So basically the same time next September or late June 2021. So we want to hear from you what you prefer. Do you prefer to wait until September, or are you going to be like, let me at it. I want to see my ladies. I want to see the lionesses and the lions as soon as possible. Sign us up for June. So just know that that is coming down the line. We do have some really amazing things planned for September this year, though, and leading up to it. Some things that we haven't finalized yet. So as soon as those are ready, I will share it with you. I promise. Until we have more, I will, of course, be sharing little tidbits on the Facebook group. But if you've got questions, if you simply want to talk and discuss what's happening out there and you need an ear, let us know. That's why this group exists. We are here to support each other. One last update, and that is on the book club. Next week is our final session for Daring Greatly. It's Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Again, the last few chapters of Daring Greatly is what we're going to cover. And then May, we are reading Untamed. Oh, it's perfect with this hairband. Untamed by Glennon Doyle. So if you want to join in next month, they'll still be on Wednesdays. We're probably going to switch up the time because meeting times have changed again. And we want to make sure that in particular the CAR meetings are honored. So we'll be doing a couple of polls on times for the Facebook book club for Untamed in May. Whew. I think that's it. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for those of you who made it all the way to the end. bless you. I look forward to catching up with all of you on the Facebook group, in the chats, etc. Until next week, have a good one. Bye.